Hello everyone, back to today's second video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days. For today's second video, it'll take us to around the 10th of December. So we go through the first 10 days of the month. Of course, 1st of December today, which is the first day of meteorological winter. That's pretty questionable, really. Of course, the weather doesn't stick to defined periods like that, so you can get wintry weather well before the official first day of winter, and you get wintry weather well after the first day of, or the last day of meteorological winter, as we know from last winter, 2017-18, which had its coldest weather at the beginning of March. So the weather doesn't stick to sort of the defined criteria like that, but it's useful to have a defined period when you're coming to divvy up the statistics. So statistical winter is from the 1st of December to the final day, either 28th or 29th of February, and so we are today at our first day of winter 2018-19. So we've got the CET in for November. I'll talk about that in a moment. Then we'll have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days. I'm going to have a little bit of analysis of the stratosphere as well, what's going on there over the North Pole. So, hope you enjoy the video and find it interesting and informative. The first video up today was the weekend forecast, and that's going for a pretty unsettled week, actually. It's going to be very mild away from the north of Scotland, but it's going to be unsettled. There'll be quite a bit of rain around. And that rain across most parts of the country on most days in the week ahead. This evening we're going to have Terry Scully's December forecast. And tomorrow we've got the Gas Weather's Winter 2018-19 forecast. I'll talk more about that at the end of the video. But starting us off is the CT for November. So this has been confirmed by Hadley. I've updated the CT page to Gazla. This is 2018 here, of course, the current year. That's January, that's February, cold month in February, a cold and average month in March. Those being the only two cold and average months so far this year, though, because April, May, June and July all came out very, very mild. In fact, very much above average, was running around 2 to 3 degrees above average from April to July. Still above average in August, but a little bit less so. And then September and October coming out virtually bang on their long-term 30-year averages. So we've got to November just here, of course, and that's has come out at 8.3, which is quite a bit above average, actually. It's well over a degree above average. It's the mildest or the warmest November since 2015 up here, when we had 9.5 as the November CT. Incidentally, look how warm December was in 2015 at 9.7, an all-time record, and smashing by getting on for 2 degrees, smashing the previous December record set in 2 years, equal 1934 and 1974. So that was an exceptionally hot, let's say, December. But November 2015 coming out at 9.5 was the last time we was warmer than, or milder than November 2018. So it has been a pretty mild month. And is this the beginning of going back into a warmer than average trend, or will something else happen in December? We'll have to wait and see on that. But certainly after a couple of cooler months, close to average in September and October, November takes us back to being over a degree, well over a degree above average. And of course that seals the deal on a milder than average autumn as well, because with September and October coming out virtually bang on average, we said that it would all be down to November. It would all be down to November as to what happens in terms of the overall autumn as well. And so autumn 2018 is also going to be coming out as a milder than average season. Not substantially so, but certainly it will come out a little bit milder than average for this autumn. So more on that in the days ahead. Of course, we're waiting to get the full UK-wide statistics in for November. As soon as we get those in a day or so's time, we'll be able to bring those to you in a video next week. Right, we'll start off having a look at the stratosphere then, and we're going to see what the temperature's doing at 30 HPA over the North Pole. So the grey line here is the trend. We're in a cooling trend for the year at the moment, bottoming out around the beginning of January and then starting to lift things back up. The black line shows where we've been through this season so far. This is at 30 HPA, one of the top levels of the atmosphere in the stratosphere. So at the moment, we're about on average, about on trend really, in terms of the temperature at 30 HPA over the North Pole, but lifting the temperature up a little bit from what has been a fairly coolish period that we've been in earlier back in November. If we go a bit further up to 10 HPA, you can see that this warming is actually a little bit more pronounced. We have actually had, or we are having, a warming of the stratosphere at 10 HPA, albeit quite a minor one. That is not a sudden stratospheric warming. To get a sudden stratospheric warming, we would have to take that black line up to around there somewhere. We always thought very dramatic, so that is certainly not a sudden stratospheric warming, but it is a warming of the stratosphere, albeit a rather modest one at 10 HPA, and quite a substantial warming really from where we was about a week or so ago down here. That is quite a lift up in the temperature. So I think we can actually say we've had our first warming of the stratosphere of this season, and this will weaken down the zonal winds. Talk about that in a moment. This is what the GFS is forecasting in terms of the temperature at 10 HPA for the next couple of weeks. So the North Pole of the Northern Hemisphere is around there, and they've got mid-latitudes around here. The blue colours are where we've got those cold temperatures at 10 HPA, so blues, purples, cold temperatures. We're looking to infiltrate greens, yellows, and eventually, potentially, oranges and reds into the North Pole. When that happens, when you get orange and red colours turning up on these charts, when that happens, it generally shows that we're having a sudden stratospheric warming event. So let's run through and see what the model is forecasting. So we keep those blue and purple colours going over the North Pole, but a little bit displaced southwards out of the pole. Actually, the actual top of the pole is not as cold as it is in the stratosphere, more down towards Scandinavia and sort of northern Europe. It's coldest there, and over the very top of the North Pole, and it actually isn't as cold as it is lower down into, not quite into the mid-latitudes, but certainly not over the pole. We go through to the more extended range, and again, just showing signs of weakening that those cold temperatures at 10 HPA, so probably weakening the polar vortex to some degree, although no sign of a stratospheric warming or a sudden stratospheric warming there. It is warming a bit on the Canadian side of the Arctic, but again, that's quite modest. That's not a dramatic warming of the stratosphere. So at the moment, up to 17th of December, there's no sign of a major sudden stratospheric warming event occurring. This is very early in the season, of course. You wouldn't normally expect a sudden stratospheric warming until you get into January or February. I've been showing you these in the winter update, so I thought I'd just include this in today's video. This is from weatheriscool.com, and it's showing the zonal winds essentially at 10 HPA over the North Pole. So the blue line shows how the zonal winds have been performing through this season. Generally, through November in particular, the zonal winds have been rather stronger than average. This black line is kind of like average or trend. So we've been a little bit stronger than average with the zonal winds over the past month or so. Weakening them down though, and the green lines here, that is the GFS ensembles. So you can see that in the next couple of weeks, it only gets us 2 weeks in, they said in the next couple of weeks the GFS ensembles are weakening the zonal winds quite substantially from where they are right now, where they have been through much of November. So a weakening of the zonal winds occurring. That's the reason we're seeing, or it's tied in with the temperature lifting up at 10 HPA. I suppose the temperature lifting up at 10 HPA is what's weakening the zonal winds. It is a bit of a chicken and an egg type situation, which comes first. So anyway, zonal winds are going to weaken at 10 HPA over the North Pole in the stratosphere over the next couple of weeks. GFS ensembles are showing that quite clearly. The sudden stratospheric warming, you remember on these charts when we looked at them in the winter updates, the other coloured lines, which are the 3 pink and the 1 blue line, those were going for a sudden stratospheric warming to be occurring very frequently anyway in December. Looks like they've pushed that back now to January. So again, I've never used these charts before. I don't know how reliable the CFS is in terms of forecasting developments in the stratosphere. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out through the winter. But we have got 1, 2, 3 of these CFS V2 members that are going for a substantial, a major almost reversal of the zonal winds in the stratosphere at 10 HP over the North Pole during January. So they would be tying in with a sudden stratospheric one. We've got another one that does it a little bit later, more like into the start of February. But it looks like the CFS has pushed that back a little bit in terms of getting that warming going in the stratosphere in December. It's pushed it back more towards January, which is more where you'd expect a sudden stratospheric warming event to occur anyway. You wouldn't really expect it to happen in December because that's very early. It can do, though. There has been stratospheric warmings that have occurred, or sudden stratospheric warmings that occurred in December, but more often they occur in December or in January or February. But you will see that most or all of these CFS V2 members are going for this major warming of the stratosphere to occur either in January or possibly into February. So still looks like we're on course for a major warming of the stratosphere at some point this winter. Right, let's do a bit of forecasting then. These are how the GFS ensembles are looking for the next couple of weeks. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average, looking at Manchester today. So we're starting off milder, warmer than average at the moment. We're going to go cooler than average by the start of next week. Then it goes mild again, so rather up and down with a temperature, a bit of a zonal sine wave in evidence there. As we go through the second week of December, possibly going a little bit cooler in that week, although again there is a lot of scattering there, as has been the case with these charts for a long while now. We have got several ensemble members that are very mild, but we've got several ensemble members that are really quite cold indeed. And so for the second week of December, there is still a question mark about what's happening there. One thing we can say is that after a very wet spell in the next week to 10 days, I'll talk about that more in a moment, but very wet in the next week to 10 days, there is a bit of an indication that things are drying out through the second week of December and going into the middle of the month. So it does look a little bit dry there, although there are still some precipitation spikes, not as many as earlier in the ensemble chart. However, that's in the unreliable time frame, so it's not to be relied upon in particular. Certainly for the next week to 10 days, it looks very unsettled and generally mild. Temperature anomalies, therefore, from the 1st through to the 9th of December are coming out milder than average for the UK, for Ireland, and for much of Scotland as well. Very mild seen across much of Europe too. Precipitation anomalies from the 1st to the 9th of December are above average, so are milder but wetter than average first week to 10 days of December, which we've been expecting. We've been talking about this in the videos for several days. It's going to be very unsettled, but temperatures away from the far north of Scotland anyway, where it'll be a bit colder, the temperatures are going to be mild. This hour 6 o'clock run of the GFS is looking for Tuesday. So we start Tuesday under a transient ridge of high pressure, but it won't be long before the next low pressure is moving in. That's going to bring heavy rain across much of the country, maybe a little bit of snow for northern Scotland. Into the second half of next week, we turn wet and windy with low pressure to the north of Scotland. And then, just briefly, the GFS wants to turn those winds into the north and bring down a little bit of a cold snap from the north next weekend, although it's not long before those northerly winds are being cut off and pushed over into Scandinavia and Central Europe as this little bit of a bump of high pressure builds in from off the Atlantic. Very quickly, the GFS is getting us back into a wet and windy scenario as we go beyond day 10. This is the 12th of December. With a deep area of low pressure out to west of UK and Ireland, we're looking wet and windy, although pressure is starting to rise a bit over Scandinavia, and that continues into the extended range. So then we start to set up a little bit of a battle, but this is all like a couple of weeks away, so it's very unreliable. We're up to Monday the 17th of December now, And we've got high pressure in over Scandinavia that's trying to turn the wind into the east, and we've got low pressure out in the Atlantic. So a little bit of a battle is going on there, and it's difficult to say which way that will go. Obviously, you would normally favour the Atlantic to override any high pressure it tries to build over Scandinavia, but it's too far away to have any sort of any concerns about in any case. This is how the parallel run of the GFS is looking in terms of the 6 o'clock run. So what was just looking at before was the operational run. This is the parallel. It's being run in parallel to the operational. Next year, this will become the main operational run of the GFS. It's like an upgraded version, if you like, of the operational run. But at the moment, they're running it in parallel while they iron out any sort of glitches that might be occurring with this upgraded version. So again, through the middle and second half of next week, looks very unsettled. Low pressures driving in off the Atlantic, bringing a lot of wet and windy weather. In the more extended range, we get that little cold snap coming up next weekend, turning winds into the north and the northwest, but it's not very long at all before that's cut off, pushing those northerly winds into Scandinavia, then building this ridge up from the south. Makes a little bit more of that ridge, though, by day 10. This is Tuesday, the 11th of December, just making a little bit more of that ridge of high pressure, centering it just to our southeast. But actually, the ridge does cover most parts of the UK, so it will probably still be quite cold, and you'll probably expect frost and fog to be occurring with that as well. In the more extended range, the parallel run of the GFS is taking the high pressure up over Scandinavia and just inflating it a little bit more compared to the operational run. So these low pressures in the Atlantic are really being blocked by that Scandinavian high, and eventually they do start getting forced to our south. So this is having a real go at turning the wind into the east through this second week of December. That's how we finish up, beginning to move those low pressures down to our south by the 17th of December, having a real go at getting wind into the east, and seemingly poised to start bringing some very cold air in from Scandinavia as well. It has been pointed out that this upgraded parallel GFS run is often more keen in its extended range to produce cold synoptic charts compared to the operational GFS run. And people have asked me why that is, and I'm not sure why that would be. It's possibly that the model is in some way over-intensifying high pressure within the northern latitudes, but I'm not too sure why that should be. It's never happened before, I don't think, when we've had the parallel run of the GFS being running parallel to the operational GFS run. So it's something that's new. I've never noticed this before when we've had upgraded versions of the GFS. So we'll just have to wait and see whether this is a flaw within this upgraded model, and they iron that out, and that's why they're running it in parallel to the operational run, so that they can iron out any problems or glitches that occur with it. Or maybe this is just an indication that the model is now at such a high resolution that it is able, in the more extended range, to start picking up on these northern blocking type synoptics. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with that as we get through to the middle of the month. Definitely the parallel GFS does appear at the moment to be more keen on turning things colder later in December than the operational GFS run is. GEM looks like this. The Canadian model brings us a little bit of a northerly snap into the north on Tuesday before wet and windy weather moves in off the Atlantic through the rest of next week. Very unsettled conditions. Into next weekend, we start to turn wind into the northwest, begin to pull some cold air out of Iceland and Greenland. And eventually, we do start to move this high pressure up to our north. So this is how we finish up at day 10 with the GEM. High pressure centred just to the northwest of Scotland, bringing down this cold north or northeast winds as the upper air temperatures showing that returning colder at day 10. ECMWF looks like this. So again, very unsettled in the coming week. Lots of low pressure bringing bouts of rain in from off the Atlantic. We get this northerly cold snap next weekend, 8th, 9th of December. And then very similar to the GM, actually, we start to build this ridge up to the north and west of the country. So we finish up at day 10 looking like that. High pressure centred just to our west, but also pushing a ridge up towards Scandinavia, having a real go to get wind into the northeast as the upper air temperatures looking pretty cold. So the GEM and the ECMWF are colder at day 10 and more blocked compared to the GFS, certainly with GFS operational run. We know that the GFS parallel does eventually get into quite a blocked cold setup itself as well. Just going to have to pause the video and answer the phone. Alright, we're back. Sorry about that. That was literally a nuisance call, so sorry about that. We're just going to finish up by having a look at the ECMWF postage stamps at day 10 from the ECMWF ensembles. So these are the options that are on the table at day 10 from the ECMWF ensembles. There's 51 ensemble members, and we've got 17 members of the ECMWF ensemble that look like this. They have quite a strong blocking signal to the west and northwest of the UK, so this is similar. I think this is similar to what the operational GFS run is showing, actually, with this high pressure out to the northwest and pushing it a little bit towards the north as well. Trough of low pressure to our east, and these are pulling down cold air from the north or the northeast. So that does show at day 10 the operational ECMWF, which did get us cold, remember, by day 10, quite blocked. That's quite well supported by the ECM ensembles at day 10. We have a further 15 that look like this. Again, high pressure ridging from the Atlantic to the west of the UK and extending it back to the north a little bit as well. The trough of low pressure is to the east. And again, these are quite cold. They're just subtly different with the position of the ridge of the high pressure and the blocking, but more or less those are in line. And so we've got 17 here and got 15 just there, so quite well supported within the ECM ensembles to be cold, actually, and funnily enough at day 10 they've got a further 14 that look like that. Not a mid-Atlantic ridge, but they do have signs of blocking to the north, and again there's a trough of low pressure centred to our east, but it is closer to us, this trough of low pressure centred to the east, so they're more unsettled, but they're probably quite cold again with the wind either from the north or possibly the northeast. They might be producing something a bit wintry, actually, particularly the northern eastern parts of the country. And then finally, there's 5 ensemble members that look like that. And these are a milder grouping with high pressure generally a little bit to the west-southwest of the country. Although the ridge does try to extend to the northeast or Scandinavia, but we'd be more or less bringing the wind in from off the Atlantic with that. And those are a little bit milder, although they are quite dry. But that's a minority option, only 5 doing that, whereas we've got like 17, and then we've got 15, and then we've got 14 that are basically producing some sort of cold, either a cold snap or maybe even a cold spell at day 10. So it does look as though the ECM ensembles at day 10 are trending onto the colder side of things, in line with what the operational ECMWF was just showing. So quite interesting that the ECM, certainly its operational run and its ensemble, wants to turn us pretty cold, at least for a while, by day 10. GM also hints at that as well, as does the GFS parallel run. Not so much the GFS operational run. But we should wait and see. That's all quite a long way off. We can say in the next week to 10 days, it's looking very unsettled. There's going to be low pressure close to the country. It'll be mild, but it's going to be pretty wet away from northern Scotland. Cold snap next weekend. I think that looks quite strongly modelled now. Within all model outputs, we get some sort of a northwesterly or northerly snap next weekend. And then really it's what happens after that. Does it very quickly turn mild with the Atlantic rolling back in, or do we start to make more of that high pressure to our west-northwest and build up a block in the second week of December? I think we'll be concentrating on that in next week's videos. Right, so that's today's 2 videos done and dusted. Tonight we've got Terry's Goldest December forecast. Tomorrow we're up to update number 14 for Christmas. We've got the 14th Christmas update coming up tomorrow evening. But before that, it's the big one. 10 a.m. tomorrow, we'll be releasing the GasWeathers.com Winter 2018-19 forecast. It's all been building up to this over the past 3 months. So tomorrow, all will be revealed in terms of what we're forecasting for the winter. I'll see you at 10 a.m. tomorrow, but before that, of course, we've got Terry's December forecast. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.